Hey Rockstar, if you're watching this video, you are either A, a wrestler that has had a concussion, B, a parent or a coach of a wrestler who wants to understand or at least expand their knowledge of concussions, or C, a high-level wrestler that wants to minimize their chance of getting a concussion. In this video, I'm going to share with you guys 3 critical tips to getting you back to the mat faster and safer after your concussions and minimizing the risk of recurrence. Then I'm going to share with you guys a couple big bombs at the end. So I'd stick around for these, and a lot of high-level athletes and pros don't even get to this level because the healthcare providers that they're seeking for their concussions or that they're discussing their symptoms with have no idea how to tie together the nutrition, the hydration, the sleep, the recovery, the physical aspect of all of this that we're going to discover in this video. So come on inside, let's jump into it, and let's have some fun. All right, guys, so like I said, my name is Dr. Josh McClain. I am a private practice physical therapy owner, and I deal a lot with high-level wrestlers who are trying to come back from concussions, and they unfortunately have symptoms for an extended amount of time because they do not know what to do. And when I'm saying extended, I'm talking like 4 weeks, and all of a sudden they come in and within a couple days their symptoms are automatically getting better, right? Like what we're doing is high level, but very few people understand this, and this is what I want to share with you guys today about what you can start doing immediately to get back to the mat quicker and safer. So let's dive in. Typically, whenever we get a concussion, we're going to have some sort of mat side or emergency room assessment, like immediately, right? I mean, that's pretty typical process. And during this, what they're trying to do is rule out anything scary, right? Is there a big fracture? Is there a spinal cord injury? Is there any brain damage that we got to worry about? Any significant alteration in cognitive function? Like, those are all the big, scary things. And if we can start to rule those out, now what the typical conclusion comes down to, hey, just rest a while, take a couple weeks off. If symptoms continue, then just keep resting a little bit longer. Once you're symptom free for 4 to 6 days, like now you can start getting back into activity. But really with that typical conclusion, all that we get is a lot of uncertainty. And me as a high-level wrestler, I start to get fueled by this, right? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, just wait? Like, is this a waiting game or what am I supposed to do? And then we start to see these athletes start to feel helpless, right? And they start to play these mind games, get these thought viruses embedded in their head. And at the end, they just say, you know what, I don't care. Like, I just want to get back to the mat. Mom, yeah, it still hurts, but it's not a big deal. They try to avoid the situation. So our goal is to get rid of this model as much as we can. And I want to start to empower you guys to take control of your health and your performance. And by the end of this, what you guys are going to understand is how to use your symptoms tracking-wise to make sure that you're improving, right? I mean, if I'm a high-level athlete, I'm not just going to compete for the next 4 years if I don't know I'm making progress. If I go in the weight room for a season, I want to know that by the end of that season, I've made improvements. So we use these symptoms to track our progress and show us that we're improving in the right direction. You guys are also going to understand what else can kind of lead to these symptoms, right? And a majority of athletes that come in, it's not even the brain issue going on anymore. It's just all these other impairments, the muscles around it, their limitations with range of motion, all these different things that they can address immediately that they should have started, that now within a couple days will get rid of all of their symptoms and really get them to that accelerated recovery plan. But they missed out on it for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 months, whatever that may be. So then we're going to finish it off by talking about how we can accelerate your recovery journey. And at the very bottom, if you guys stick around for it, I'm going to share some bomb tips with you guys that very few people ever understand, or that they understand, is this actually going to help my recovery? And from even on the professional level, we don't see professional athletes utilizing this information, mainly because those that are helping them get back are uneducated on it. So you guys are going to be more educated by the time you leave here than the majority of the population out there. All right, so let's dive into how we can use these symptoms to understand our progress and how we're improving. So the concussion grading scale, there's a link above below around this video. Download this scale, guys. This will help guide you through this process. And that night of or the next morning of, I want you guys to get a baseline score. So write down the date on the top of it, print out a few versions of it so you can then take it again the next day or 2 days later and start watching your symptom score improve. If this drops by more than 10, it's considered a very, very significant improvement, and that means we're going in the right direction. If you are already low on symptoms, that means what I'm about to talk about next, you guys can get started on immediately. Like there should be no break because your low symptoms, everything in the brain isn't really that metabolically scared and there's not a ton going on from the brain level. And that means that you guys can start these next level things immediately to start getting back to the mat sooner and safer. Then if we do use this and it starts to worsen, now I've got a tool that I can bring back to my trainer or to my physician or to whoever that primary person is that I was seeing and say, you know what, I've been tracking this and it's just getting worse and I'm kind of worried right now and here's the results that I got, here's my symptoms over the last 3 days. Now you're very, very educated and give them a lot of specific details. They're going to help them understand what's going on with your process and they're going to be able to help guide you to that next level. All of this can start immediately and should be done daily until you start to get back to that 0, 0, 1. If you had some headaches before or you had some trouble falling asleep, like that's not outside of the norm. So just understand like your baseline score might not be complete zeros down the board, but you have to get back to that normal range of what you would already consider to be normal for you. All right, so then what this is going to help you do is not only understand your progress and that you're improving, but like I discussed, it's going to eliminate a lot of that uncertainty and it's going to give you specific day-by-day progress reports to say, you know what, I'm a lot more confident that this is going to end up in a great position versus getting worse. So then after we talk about how you can start using your symptoms to see if you're improving, then we're going to start going into what is actually causing your symptoms. And I want you guys to understand this because this is, again, something that I see people 4 to 6 weeks out with, and all of a sudden within 2 days they can improve it. So if you understand this concept alone, this is going to be a significant game changer for you with your concussions and getting back to this mat or back to sport as soon as possible. So let's dive in and look at what else could be causing this. And when we talk about concussions, most people just go that it's a brain issue. And yes, 100% at some level there is some sort of brain activity going on that's causing some symptoms. But what they don't understand is that when we look at this from the muscular level, there's also muscles that create the same exact headache type patterns that the majority of people with concussions have. And the concept that I want to explain to you is that anytime there's pain, there's also muscular dysfunction, right? If I was to punch you in the arm as hard as I can and said raise your arm, you go something like this. You'd compensate and your muscles wouldn't fire like they would if it was a healthy and I didn't just jack you in the arm. So understand the concept that if there's pain, I got muscle dysfunction. And if I got muscle dysfunction, I'm going to create symptoms or I'm going to create imbalances or some sort of limitations for myself under a protection mechanism. Okay, so you got that? You understand that part? Now, moving on, and we're looking at the actual muscles that are affected, right? We've got what we call sternocleidomastoid, so you can look that up, and that's the one that's on the screen right now with those black X's on it. If I push on one of those black X's, that's considered a referral point, and that will start to shoot those symptoms up into those red zones, and we typically see this right around the temporal region, right behind the eye. And there's other ones called the suboccipital muscles, again, that put you deep to the eyeballs, kind of create this ram horn effect up and around your ear, and that replicates a lot of the same symptoms, the headache type symptoms that we're getting from a concussion level. So first we have to go in and identify which tissues are involved, and then once we find out which tissues those are, we have to figure out if they're tight, if they're weak, or what we need to do to get them fired back up and working how they should. If they are weak, we need to strengthen them, right? If they're tight and I feel like I have a big stretch, I need to stretch them out. It's not hard, it's not rocket science to understand, but really it's just finding those tissues that are involved. Again, sternocleidomastoids, suboccipitals, and the upper trap muscles are the typical ones that we see that create a lot of these referral patterns. Once we start to address those and they get back to functioning like they should, then they take a lot of the stress and a lot of that symptoms out of the equation for the concussion-based things. And these are things that you can start to address immediately, right? Like not 3 days later, not 4 weeks later. Start this stuff immediately. It's very low risk. There's nothing that's going to get worse from this, right? Your symptoms might flare up a little bit just because it's those muscles that are involved, and that could create more of the headache type stuff, but it's not going to hinder you. It's only going to help you. All right, so now moving on, we talked about how we can use those symptom trackers. We talked about what else could be causing your symptoms. And now I want to finish this off with how you can actually kind of accelerate your recovery journey and how you can take it to the next level a lot quicker. And to understand this, I want you guys to think about a car accident, right? When I get in a car accident, there's some sort of damage. That's the same thing as getting a concussion. Like there's some sort of damage that just happened. Once I get in that car accident, all of a sudden there's witnesses, there's police, the fire truck comes, an ambulance comes, there's innocent bystanders all over the place that are curious about what's going on in that car accident situation. If I look at that from my brain level, it's the same exact concept. It might be one area of my brain that controls a specific function of my body, but then all those neighboring areas, right? I mean, it's only an enclosed space, so everything's really close. Now it might be the visual guys that come over and start asking around. It might be the auditory guys. It might be the people that, you know, deal with your smell. It might be the people that deal with your balance a little bit. So all these different regions of the brain can start to get involved, and that's why it might seem like a huge cascade of symptoms right away, because everyone's curious about what's going on. But as we start to eliminate out a lot of the different things, right? I mean, nobody is significantly injured. I can get rid of my ambulance. There's not a fire going on. I don't need the fire truck here. So they start to take off. The police has done a full report. They've talked to all the witnesses. The witnesses start to leave the scene. This is where my symptoms can rapidly start to calm down once all those little nosy areas of my brain start to calm down and start to say, you know what, there's not really anything cool to see here anymore. We can go ahead and go back to what we were doing. Then from there, I got to slowly start building back up my confidence. And what I mean by this is, if I got in a car accident, right, I'm not just going to jump back on the highway that, 2 minutes later, jump back in a car and start going 100 miles an hour. I'm going to be fearful and I'm going to be apprehensive. I'm going to go slow. If I get in a car again, I want to do it in a safe environment. I want to build my way back up to being a safe driver and getting exposed to all these different things again after that traumatic accident. And only after I go through the physical, the mental, and the emotional recovery aspect can I actually get back to my high-level performance or back to driving fast on the road, going in and out of traffic and getting back to that level of function that I was previously at. So I'm going to bring this down a little bit more just towards the concussion, right? When I get a concussion, I got some sort of tissue injury going on in the brain with a metabolic cascade happening. What we start to see is that when I want things to heal, this is a blood pressure barometer, right? So I want you guys to understand pressure and blood and how it affects this whole thing. So when I need tissues to heal, I need to bring in more oxygen. I need to bring in more nutrients. Those are the healing blocks for all the tissues in my body. To do that, that stuff gets transported by the blood. If I do not bring increased blood flow in, I'm not going to be able to get those increased oxygen, that increased nutrients up there, and I'm also going to limit the amount of waste that I can pull out. So what I start to do is in a safe environment, I start to build back up my blood pressure. I get my heart rate up a little bit. I start doing some sort of physical exertion that is low impact and very safe for all the tissues that are involved with your concussion. And as I start to do this, if my symptoms go down, or if my symptoms don't even go up, and I know that the enclosed space in my brain, if I raise blood pressure, it raises the blood pressure in my brain as well. And with this, if I don't get increase in symptoms, it's probably less of a cascade of my brain tissue and more of just the tissues around the brain that might be causing some of those symptoms. So as I start to do this and it starts to make its way down and my actual pain or my symptoms start to decrease, I know I'm on the right track. And I know that by doing some low-level exercise, I'm going to get those therapeutic benefits that I need and that I want to enhance my recovery journey. Then, as this starts to decrease, I start to get back in a safe environment, improving my fitness, improving my mental, my emotional states. Now I can start to get back up to that level of performance that I was already at. And this is a critical aspect that most people don't understand. And you can start all of that immediately, right? Like, it doesn't have to wait until tomorrow. It can start the night of, just going for a low intensity walk. Even though you might not feel great, it's going to help to increase that blood flow, bring that nutrients up, and overall get more blood and oxygen to the tissues. All right, so now we've ripped through all three of those, right? We've started to talk about how you can use your symptoms and how to track those. Talked about what else could be causing your symptoms. Then we talked about how you can accelerate your recovery journey. Now it's time for the big bombs, right? And these things, again, like most professionals don't ever even get to this level of understanding. So you guys are going to be so far ahead just by knowing this. And if you find this useful, by all means, subscribe to our channel. Get more people involved with this so that they can understand it as well. It's a great resource to fall back onto as you start moving forward if you understand the concepts of concussion. All right, so breaking this down into these bonus tips here, anytime I get injury, I get inflammation. If I cut my finger, there's a little red zone that goes around it. If I break a bone, I get, it's swelling and inflammatory markers around there as well. Anytime that I bring more people in, I also start to get more waste, right? Anytime I start to bring more cellular activity, I start to get more different cells involved. I start to get more waste produced by that because everyone gets excited and everyone's breathing harder, everyone's working harder, and they start to create more waste in general. So now what can we be doing to not only minimize inflammation, but also to decrease how much waste is in those cells so that I can start to heal a lot quicker and a lot more efficiently? The first thing it comes down to is understanding that tissues need nutrients to heal. And these same tissues can also minimize the inflammatory response that your body is going to have, which will enhance the healing process and get you back sooner and safer. So understanding that, fish oils or fish have great omega oils in them, which will help limit inflammation. Chia seeds, great omega oils. Berries have great anti-inflammatory effects. Same with our greens. They're loaded full of nutrients that help to minimize inflammation, but also can lead to the right nutrients being in the right place to help with my recovery. The last thing we're going to talk about is how to actually start pumping out that waste. And you'll see over here, one of these little circles under here says toxic remover. And what that means is that my body, my urinary system is designed to filter things through my kidneys and through my liver and then excrete them, right? Like that's how it's designed. So I want to ramp that up because I know if I start to ramp up my hydration, if I start to drink more water, I'm going to start to pee more often and it's going to start to circulate through my system more efficiently. And then that way I'm pumping out more of that waste. I'm getting more of those nutrients moving where I want them and taking away the excess that I don't want and I'm not going to use. And then I'm going to excrete that. And this stuff can be done immediately starting with your water intake, right? And when we talk about this, I want to minimize things that have high electrolytes in them initially and high sugar because that stuff can all start to throw off this process and actually even create more inflammation of which we're trying to limit down. And again, this stuff can be done immediately. You don't need to wait 2 weeks to come in and then see me and waste valuable time and money to get that done, right? Like this stuff can be happening immediately from that night, the next day, etc. But you might not feel like you want to eat or you might not feel getting like very satisfied through these meals. But trust me, it's going to help you out. And if you want to get back to the mat sooner, faster, and safer, you have to be doing this next level stuff. So I hope that stuff kind of helps summarize for you guys what it's like to go through a concussion process and what we look at from a very high level of return to sport, right? And now once you start getting rid of those symptoms, you start building back up in a safe environment, you start to address all the mental, physical, and emotional limitations that an athlete may have. Now you can start getting back to the high level stuff because you're eating right, you're hydrating right, you understand how sleep affects it, you've started to implement the recovery process from a blood pressure, physical exertion standpoint, and now your body's ready to go back to sport faster and safer. I hope you guys found this stuff useful. If so, and like I said, subscribe to our channel. We got tons of stuff coming out about injuries, about wrestlers, about pain, about everything that you guys need from nutrients to sleep and everything in between. And then also there should be a link below around this video. Get involved with the next level exercise. If you don't have somebody that can guide you through this, we will help you guys out. We'll give you those exercises. You can start today and just start getting after them in a very safe, controlled environment. Understand that this is not a one-on-one care situation and that you should consult with any primary care physician or trainer that you are with and utilize this stuff as resources in your toolbox to start asking questions and finding those people that can help you near you. Thanks again, and I hope to see you on the inside. Keep impacting the world and keep spreading smiles.